Hey, what's up, everybody? How's it going? Got to get my camera turned on here. Welcome to the live stream, little impromptu get together this afternoon. Hockey games going in the league, trade recap. The whole deadline ended yesterday. Thought it'd be great to have a little conversation with a couple friends here on the show and just talk about the Kraken, talk about all the trades we saw. Got the Nintendo fired up today, the scoreboard, and a couple of friends here already with us. Let's switch over here. We got at Sea Kraken Dude Ty and our buddy Striatic joining us. Striatic, how are you today? Let's start with you. What's going on over in your neck of the woods?
Oh, like personally, I I felt a little sick yesterday, which was strange. And I got like really cold feeling, which is like strange for me. I never feel cold, and then I just like fell asleep really early. But then I woke up and now I'm feeling fine. So I don't know what happened.
Usually it just takes a little coffee to kind of get things all dialed in, right?
Oh, I don't drink coffee. I
Oh,
don't drink caffeine or anything like that. But I'm not a Mormon or anything, so I'm not sure why.
all right.
Just
Well,
something.
I'll drink the coffee for you then.
No, as like as risky as it gets for me is those second intermission hot chocolates from Madero's. That's
Yes.
it. That's about as spicy as it gets for me in the beverage department.
I usually steer clear of a lot of sugar just because, but I'm always super jealous when I read that. I'm like, oh, I need to make a hot chocolate right now. But I usually stick to just coffee, black coffee, nothing in it usually, maybe a little cream every now and then. But what's going on your way, Ty? I hear it's a little bit stormy.
Oh yeah, down in Vancouver we have the full-on precipitation mode going on right now. So it started with some pretty crazy hail, and then we had some thunder, which I thought you guys would be able to hear, but you can't. And now it's just pouring rain. So I tried to open up the window so people could see, but you can't really see rain
Yeah,
on the webcam. So
Your mic,
gotta
your
point
mic
it
is
straight up.
your mic is too good. That's the problem, Scott. You're
oh,
you're you're sounding perfect, but it's not getting the ambient noise.
let me take it outside.
So, yeah, whirlwind of trades concluded yesterday at the deadline. It was 3 p.m. Eastern time, noon here on the West Coast. We're going to do our best to kind of work through it. We're going to keep our eye on the NHL scoreboard like I talked about. I do have the Blades of Steel game. It's kind of a little system test, let's call it that. Got some plans here on the channel to keep working on some of the retro hockey games to add to the channel. It's just a new little thing I'm trying over here. But great to have you guys along. We're going to chat for a little bit. We might have a couple other people jump in. I have a couple of DMs out there. We'll see who's busy and who's not. But I didn't have a whole lot going on today. So what's that?
Paul's in the chat.
Oh, yeah, I got to flip over to the chat. The Paul. There he is. What's up, Paul? Paul says, I was busy at work all week and could barely keep up with Kraken highlights. Pretty satisfied that we stayed put at the deadline. And I think that's going to be kind of the general tone. People are kind of feeling that same way. I didn't think that they should have done a whole lot based on how they were playing right now. We'll see if we can continue on with that. But yeah, let's talk about the Kraken to start things off a little bit, guys. And Ty, maybe we'll start on your side. Just, I don't know, your feelings initially coming out of the trade deadline season here now. Francis didn't do a whole lot, added Magna. Other than that, stood still. What are your initial thoughts there?
I mean, I think boring actually is a great place to be in for a second-year franchise. We have a lot of good pieces. We have some great chemistry developing. I don't know if everybody watched during like the All-Star break and all that on Instagram and the other social media, but all the boys are out together. The team chemistry is building like crazy. And honestly, if you start bringing in, some of them big names like Taves or something like that, you run a huge risk of completely destroying that locker room and stuff like that, or introducing something negative. So the lack of moves, the success the team is had compared to year one, like I think this is well aligned for what we're doing this year, and then long-term dividends as well. Smart moves, added a little bit of depth, big man out back, and just kept it simple. And sometimes that simpleness sends all of the message you need to send to that locker room that, hey, I'm confident in you guys. We can go postseason, and then we'll just see what happens from there.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe Striatic on your side of things, just your thoughts. Like we've said already, it was a little bit boring, but definitely some stepping stones being built for the future, I think, for the Kraken as far as they're concerned, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm glad that they didn't go for any super big, high-priced rentals. Definitely, I don't think it's the time for that. I do think there's more that probably could have been done. Even though the team right now, isn't exactly a Stanley Cup contender, I think there's a lot of value in winning a round.
Yeah.
And giving a player or other players like Matty Beniers that extra playoff experience. I think that is worth a late round pick. But I think it seemed like, so I was sort of more of an advocate of trying to take a gamble on a player. Just make sure you don't pay more than a late round pick. Use what cap space was left, which was probably a little under $4 million if you trade the Donskoy contract out.
Right.
But it sounds like that wasn't available. So it probably should have been available. I think Chuck Fletcher probably should have taken a late round pick for JVR instead of getting absolutely nothing. But I'm happier that, for example, we didn't get a player like James Van Riemsdyk at all than I would have been if we paid a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
But I am a little bit surprised that they weren't able to leverage a late round pick and their cap space to collect someone. But all in all, I'm happy. It's not a perfect deadline. Perfect deadline would probably be, again, leveraging the cap space and a late round pick to try to get a role player to try to get the team through that first round. But better to not make any mistakes at this point than to not have an absolutely perfectly finely adjusted, wholly optimized roster.
It's not like you got to push everything on the table and make a huge run for it this year. Did feel like Ron Francis kind of put his stop limit at a certain level and said, if you're going to meet me here, great. Otherwise, I'm going to go take a nap and read the paper.
And we know that's how he operates at the expansion draft. He set a price, he set a price and he stuck to it. Right. So this deadline's the same. I mean, seems like he probably set some prices and just stuck to them. And, sometimes you miss it on opportunities by doing that. And, there's maybe some criticism that could be levied, but on the other hand, it's a great way of not making really big mistakes and not talking yourself into something that you're not really sure of. So I definitely respect his process. Even if it isn't perfect every time, he is not making unforced errors, which a lot of GMs do.
Yeah. Yeah, and no rush really to do anything. You did hear some of the rumors, Ty. Maybe you can respond to this a little bit as we go. But, Chychrun was kind of rumored, JVR, like Striatic already mentioned.
Yep.
You heard kind of the rumors with Susie back and forth, potentially Borgen. And none of that really came to fruition. You did also see Detroit there make a push to get JVR. And then that kind of happened, but then didn't happen. All of a sudden, things changed real fast. But I don't know, maybe start with Susie. Kind of your thoughts there going into next season now. Is Susie going to be back?
I don't think he'll be back. I'm kind of like, I'm a day-to-day on Susie. Some days I love him. Other days I'm just like, this guy could go. So I don't think he'll be back next season. I see a higher priority in signing someone like Dunn, or maybe even bringing Borgie a little bit of a contract. Those guys are contributing more, have more upside for sure. Dunn's upside is pretty massive. I'd like to see him get locked down, but don't want to get too ahead of myself and talking through everybody.
Yeah, and maybe it'd be helpful too. You guys may not be able to see it really good, but try to pop up the cap-friendly website here.
I have that's what I've been looking at. So we have, like Striatic said, we have $4 million left in available space, and so I've just been looking at what we have here.
Yeah, so and then you've got, Morgan Geeky and RFA coming up here, Daniel Sprong, also an RFA, Vince Dunn. That's the big one, really, I think, in Striatic, if you want to talk to that a little bit as well. William Borgen, again, right there at the same cutoff. Cale Fleury, who's been regularly scratched this year, not a surprise, but and also Jones is going to come off the books, which might work out just right if Drieger's ready to go next year. I would assume he is, but I don't know. Obviously priority one is Vince Dunn. I talked about this a little bit the other night, Striatic. I don't know if you were on that stream, but initially my projections just for fun were $6 million plus And I said that about a year ago. I got made fun of a little bit on Twitter, whatever. But I feel like that's where it's going to end up at this point for Vince Dunn to get an extension done, regardless of where he goes.
I think what Francis is probably looking to do with Vince Dunn, and it's probably what, or may have been what he was thinking when the team took him at the expansion draft over, Tarasenko, is he probably wants to find his Jacob Slavin. Now, I don't mean that in that, they have exactly the same play style or anything like that, but the opportunity to lock up a young defender for an extended period of time, which is something that he did in Carolina with Slavin, and you look at that contract now and it's just like absolutely fantastic. The size of it, very digestible, and the term great. So I think he might try to do that with Dunn. The trick with Dunn is it may be harder to keep his cost down because he's a little bit more productive, or I think he's a little bit more conspicuous in his point scoring than Slavin was at the time that contract was signed. So yeah, $6 million seems like it's understandable. It's definitely possible. I would just like to see it. You don't want to get in a situation like the Oilers did with Darnell Nurse, where they bridged them and then they ended up having to buy a bunch of UFA years at like $9 million. I think the play Francis will go with is maybe something that seems a little high, maybe to some fans, but really long term, like 6 million plus, maybe even 7, but is going to avoid the big misstep of having to sign him at 8 or 9, or who knows what happens with the salary cap if it goes up any higher, or if his level of play improves, you might even be getting to higher than that. Potentially, we would all hope that his play accelerates to the point where he could get a $10 million contract elsewhere, but we're paying him something like, 6 or 7. That would be fantastic.
Well, and the cap's going to stay flat, relatively flat, we anticipate next year and maybe year following. Depends. A lot of things up in the air with league revenues now with the regional sports networks. Everything's going kind of down the tubes as far as, Bally Sports and some of those other things are concerned. So it could be really, really interesting on where salary cap goes over the next few years. A lot of factors at play, but yeah, I'm really loving Vince Dunn. I feel like he's kind of coming into his own, and it's definitely, he's got that great chemistry, it feels like, with Larson. So we'll see what happens, I guess. And that's going to happen in the offseason. I've heard a few times now. Yep. I think that they're pushing the extension talks out, which is probably wise. It's tough to talk business when you're in the middle of a stretch run. But Ty, also, a big element to that is special teams in the stretch run. We've talked about this on, the post-game recaps quite a bit. If you want to maybe go into this a little bit and how that kind of dovetails with some of these players the Kraken are trying to keep around next year. But, penalty kills look pretty good lately. Last almost 10 games or so. Power play.
Like 21 in a row before they lost it the other night. Yeah.
Power play maybe not so much, but getting a little bit better chance-wise, I think. Maybe just kind of your thoughts on how important special teams are going to be as we go through this push towards the playoffs.
Very important. In the playoffs, special teams are an absolute, they can be a deal breaker or maker for sure. If you look at a team like Edmonton, where they have that automatic check in the box that you're going to score, that's a great thing to have for special teams going in. Now, Seattle, we don't have anything like that at all. We have a shaky PK that either can be 0 or hero. And then the power play, man, you got all kinds of animations going on. You doing okay up there?
This is
Don't
live.
get distracted.
I clicked the wrong button, then I clicked it again. I'll just leave it on this screen for now. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Ultimately, I think it's more of a negative for us heading towards the postseason. I think that's going to be a factor that hurts us more than it helps us. But I also the writing's been kind of on the wall. I could see, some coaching changes from the assistants as far as special teams and things like that go going into next season. I don't know. I'm also like, I should define my position. I don't expect to go anywhere in the playoffs. We made it. Let's see what happens. Maybe a little tenacious play, beat on some guys, and then make our graceful exit. Like, it's likely what's going to happen. So I'm not about, selling everything, sell the farm like some of these teams are. And I'm not like, oh, our special teams is going to, make or break us. Like, I'm just trying to stay neutral, kind of sit around, watch, and enjoy the team, what they're giving us. Cause I think it's a great product compared to last year. And I'm just content. It's a weird feeling. It's like,
there's always kind of that desire to change things, maybe fiddle a little bit too much. You break it until it's fixed, I guess. I forget the cliche term there, but we'll see what happens here. But definitely excited for this stretch run. I think the Kraken are positioned. They kind of have, their own destiny in their own hands at this point going forward. They're right there in the race. Edmonton, LA, Vegas, Calgary's in there as well, a little bit further back. But let's talk about around the league here, just kind of the highlights of trades, and we'll go through the list maybe in a little bit finer grain detail. But I just kind of wanted to start out east because obviously that's where it feels like the power is right now. The Rangers.
I love the Rangers moves. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and maybe Ty, I'll let you go first on this one because I promised him Striatic, and then we'll come back. Striatic. Maybe we'll talk Bruins with you a little bit, but Ty really wanted to talk Rangers and definitely chime in, Striatic. But Tarasenko added earlier. You've got Kane now that came over ahead of the deadline, but basically into the deadline. That's added to Panarin, Zibanejad, Adam Fox, and Igor Shesterkin. No big deal. Just a Vezina Trophy winner.
Panarin.
Just goes on and on.
Yeah, this roster is super fun to look at. I mean, there's some salty vets on there, and then what excites me the most is you put together this much firepower, and then you have someone like Igor Shesterkin in net.
Yeah,
that's the formula for success and very deep runs. So I'm excited to see what this Rangers team can do. They were really fun to watch last playoffs with the kid line and stuff like that. We still have the kid line. Plus, like, I'm so excited to watch this team go through. And it's just a bunch of good guys too. It's not like there's nobody on there that I don't like, which is wonderful. So yeah, West Coast fan my whole life, Avs fan, and then Kraken, obviously, because I live here. And man, I'm excited to watch the Rangers in the postseason.
Yeah, and they kind of hit that wall with the Lightning last year, right? They
juggernaut team.
Felt like they had that series in control. I don't know, maybe you can kind of reminisce on that for a second, but
yeah, I mean, that was a fantastic series that just turned into Tampa Bay hockey, where those bigger bodies kind of wear you down and slow you up, and then you're kind of relying on that kid line to produce a little bit too much. Once you shut that down, it kind of falls apart. So that's not going to be the case this year. You got these lines out here that can go crazy, all different directions. I mean, Patrick Kane on there and stuff like that, like some salty vets that have multiple cups, that know what to do, that know how to rally the boys. Some previous, chemistry there with Panarin. Like, I don't know, buckle up. Here we go. Yeah, I'm going to pause right as you take a drink.
East is crazy. That's my own fault for bad timing. East is pretty stacked. Striatic. I just quickly looking here. We could go into the Bruins and Leafs, Devils. They all make pretty big moves. Maybe let's start with the Bruins just because they're on a roll again. It feels like they've been on a roll all season. 10 wins in a row. They won today. You can see on the scoreboard there. If I flip it over, see they won 4-2, beat the Rangers, who we were just talking about. But man, Striatic, is this a team that is potentially peaked, or not peaked, but like run high octane for so long now? Are they at any risk, even though they've loaded up a little bit with some players, are they at risk at maybe having an oopsie in the playoffs?
Okay, so I'm not one to believe in curses or anything too much, except for when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are undoubtedly actually supernaturally cursed.
Yeah.
But people worry about the President's Trophy curse sometimes. And you look at this team and you think, oh, they're so good. They must be beyond that. They're so far ahead of the field. But there are some concerns. I mean, I believe that they have a really high PDO, which means that they're getting really good shooting and really good goaltending. And sometimes when you have really good shooting and really high goaltending, it can be unsustainable. But they've sustained it an awful long time, haven't they?
I mean, set a new record.
And you play against them. You know, when we watched both games that the Kraken played against them, this team is amazingly skilled, but also no quit. Like, they just keep playing. You talk about, you know, teams saying, oh, we need to, you know, put in a full 60 minutes. You know, even in that shutout that we had against them, which was fantastic, they were dangerous the whole game. Like, they did not play poorly in that game. So I don't know. You do like look at that style of play though and be like, you know, can you play with that intensity for a whole season and still have gas left in the tank? But they've come this far. They still have the energy now. I mean, yeah, but it is something you worry about. It is something that you immediately think about with this team, whether they're kind of burning the candle at both ends. At some point, it falls apart. You know, could happen in the first round, but I don't know. I think that they did it. I think that they had a really good deadline. I think bringing in Bertuzzi, like, normally I'm not. I mean, he's a player. I mean, he can score. I think that there are a lot of players that could do his production, but he does seem like he fits their identity. So that's probably important for them.
Yeah.
And Orlov, if you're going to rent a defender, like, I mean, I don't think you can do much better than that. They have a bunch of players that are on expiring contracts, and I'm not sure Bergeron's going to be there after this year. So, you know, get the best possible rental you can, and make the best possible team you can make even better. It seems like they're doing everything. They're doing everything right now.
Great goaltending too, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes, of course. And their tandem's good. They don't just have one good goalie. They've got a good goalie relationship going on there. It's
some great Tindy celebrations.
Exactly. I love that stuff. And I don't know. They seem like they have just they seem unstoppable. I don't know what to say other than, you know, there are some signs that maybe it is unsustainable, but, you know, there were signs that it was unsustainable months ago. Everyone, you know, saying, oh, they're going to fall off, and it hasn't happened yet. So
it'd be super ironic if this was the year the Maple Leafs actually knocked the Bruins out, but we'll see. Even just saying that feels like I'm already jinxing the Leafs.
They're pretty much locked into first round against Tampa. So make it to the second round for that matchup to happen. Probably. I haven't looked at the playoff odds in a while, but I think last month it was like 90% chance that they're going up against Tampa first round. So
yeah, maybe let's look at the wild card here real quick. I'll just flip over before we get a little bit further into some of the trade chatter, but let me load that just a second. Okay. So right now, Boston obviously at the top of the Atlantic there. I'm using Sportsnet. I like how they split up the wild card standings. And now they also have these nice little dots over here that shows you the last 5 in their streak and who they played. Pretty cool. I like this website. Okay, so yeah, Boston, Toronto there, top of the Atlantic, Tampa Bay. I mean, these teams are just unreal. Carolina and the Metropolitan, New Jersey and the Rangers. So pretty stacked across the board. Right now, the wild card race between the Islanders, the Penguins, even down to the Senators and Panthers there, Sabres, the Caps are still in it, the Red Wings still in it, but getting a little bit further out of the picture. So it's going to be wild down the stretch. I don't think Philly's going to make it in. But yeah, Senators also kind of putting their chips on the table, making that acquisition for Chychrun, which we can talk about here as we break it down. But yeah, the behemoths atop the East Ty. It's going to be a wild race, and I would anticipate some of these teams are going to beat each other up pretty good in the divisional rounds, right?
We hope so. Because there's some absolute like if you look at Toronto's roster, it's like a freaking all-star team, dude. It's crazy.
Everybody in the West is hoping these teams kind of beat each other up through the playoffs, because these teams are stacked. I mean, we haven't even talked about the Hurricanes yet.
I will say that there is kind of an opportunity to compare and contrast the Rangers and Bruins deadline a little bit. Like, I do wonder if maybe the Rangers would have been better suited to, instead of, really loading up on offense, if they had gone after and been able to secure Orlov instead, if that would have been the better move. But yeah, it is interesting because the just to see the Bruins like really put a focus on improving their defense, although Orlov does, contribute offensively as well. If maybe the Rangers had adopted that instead of really loaded up. It's going to be interesting to see who's more successful, which approach is more successful.
Yeah. You got a comment asking about the Kane trade specifically.
Oh, here, let's flip over here. Daisy, what's up, Daisy? Thoughts on the Patrick Kane trade? And I'll hand off to you guys if you want to speak to that. We kind of touched on that as we came into the stream, but personally, I've made it known I'm not a huge Patrick Kane fan. Just on the personal side of things, he's an amazing hockey player, Stanley Cup winner, over and over in Chicago. Highly skilled. I think he's going to add another just offensive factor for the Rangers that just stacks it on even more to that group. They're just loaded with talent now. They're scary to me. And if I'm Boston, and we've just talked about this, you're running at high octane, but that Rangers team, I thought they were super close to breaking through last year, and they just kind of let things slip away. But I don't know, Ty, maybe if you want to respond on that a little bit as well.
I'm all aboard. I mean, you have some automatic chemistry between Panarin and Kaner right off the get-go. You already seen a bunch of videos and stuff on their Instagram about them joking around, and it's just like the bros are back. You got like old Mark goalie tandem going on, kind of broage going on. But I mean, conditional 2023 second round and a 2023 fourth round. What? For a 3-time Stanley Cup champion, not only are you adding the Patrick Kane skill, which as a hockey player myself, spent many years trying to emulate this guy on the ice and do some of the things that he does so effortlessly, but the experience of those 3 cups and being through the entire series, however many times, I think it's going to be not only a massive addition on the ice, but also a massive addition in the locker room. And he genuinely just looks happy, and happy hockey players that are playing for the boys in the room. Those are scary guys to have. So I like it. If you're a Rangers fan, this is great.
And I think it was sort of neat where he's been struggling through the year. And I think Elliot Friedman put out teams just want to see a burst. They just want to see a spark. And then he immediately went out and had a hat-trick game. And so I think you have a player here who's older, who can't put together a full season anymore. But that's not what the Rangers need. The Rangers just need a guy who now through all the retention and stuff, he's at a 2.5 million cap hit. They just need a guy that can win him a series. And it does seem like Kane might have that still left in him. And if that's the case, then that's all they need to do. And the assets that they gave up for him, I think it can be a conditional first.
It's if they win. So if it's
let's see, I've got it written down here. So Kane, Rangers receive Patrick Kane. Chicago retains 50% salary. And Arizona was involved in this too. Arizona retains 25%. Rangers also received Cooper Zek, if I'm saying that right. Blackhawks got Jarvi, Walensky, a conditional second round, a 2023 fourth round, and the Coyotes also received a 2025 third round. So just a lot of pieces involved in that one.
And this is a team too that has a lot of young players. They have those great high draft picks like Kako and Lafreniere, and they had a good playoff run last season, but just again, similar to Manny Benier, just the more playoff experience you can get for those. Often with teams, it can take a while to become a great playoff team, like Tampa did. There were a lot of years where they were not.
Colorado too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's like a 5-year process.
It takes a while. Your players, I think, need to get that playoff experience, and so just another good luck. So even if they, don't necessarily win the cup with this, if Patrick Kane can help them win a round, then that second rounder is already paid for itself, and if you can go further than that, then even that first rounder can be beneficial, so that you're, I guess, the younger part of that core can get extra experience in the playoffs, and that can benefit you down the line.
Yeah, every minute you're on the ice during the Stanley Cup playoffs is a huge, added benefit as a younger guy. You've seen it over and over with teams, like I just said, Colorado and New York now going to have that extra experience. Toronto seems to keep finding the exits in Game 7, but maybe this is the year. We'll see. I'm really curious. Let's talk.
Oh yeah, it's 4 years in a row, isn't it? Three or 4 years in a row for Toronto.
It's at least 4. I was thinking maybe even. No, I think you're right. It's 4. I could go look. Maybe it's. I don't know if somebody's watching. Let us know in the chat. By the way, Daisy, thanks for joining in the stream and leaving a comment. If you want to leave more, go ahead. I'll try to read them out as we go through the stream here. But yeah, it's definitely it's not a great streak for the Maple Leafs fans, but it does create great Steve Dangle content, so we all appreciate that. Let's switch gears just a little bit, guys. Let's talk Western Conference, West Coast. It felt like the Oilers were pretty active here at the trade deadline. Maybe a case of feeling the pressure a little bit up there as well, trying to keep pace with Seattle, which is a surprise this year, and bouncing back and forth in the standings. Striatic, maybe your thoughts on the Western Conference, Seattle in the mix, Edmonton right there. Obviously, LA and Vegas going to battle right up to the end of the season, but it's kind of at the top of your mind on the Western side of things.
Well, Edmonton, because, they are my other team, which is a little strange considering they're in the in the same division as the Kraken. But we do, I do watch every Oilers game, just like I watch every Kraken game. Definitely more on Team Kraken than Team Oilers now, but I will say, for the amount that they paid for Matthias Ekholm, and it may have been an overpay, that guy fills a need on that team almost perfectly. And just watching the last 2 games, like he flew in on a flight. He didn't practice with the team. He just went out on the ice for his, first post-deadline game with the Oilers. And it was like they were a completely different team defensively. Just for the, 20 or so minutes that he was out there. It makes such a huge difference. They played Toronto. They gave up 1 goal, and I went on Natural Stat Trick, and they have like 13 players that didn't have a high danger chance against. Like you took a Toronto. They took a Toronto team that was coming off the deadline and feeling pretty good about themselves and having some success. I just absolutely shut them down. And then similar in the game against the Jets, they did give up 3 goals kind of late in the game, but completely dominant. And the reduction in danger from having a really solid, like Matthias Ekholm's a really good defender. And also able to move the puck pretty well too. He, anyway, I was just very impressed with him. I wasn't sure what to think. It was a pretty big spend to get him. No, and with the first round pick, the Oilers have been really stingy about not giving up the first round picks, which is frustrating to Oilers fans because it's like, you got McDavid, you got Draisaitl, like use your first round pick already.
So the terms on that one, just to jump in real quick, it was Oilers received Ekholm and a 2024 6th round pick. Predators got Tyson Barrie, Reed Schaefer, that first round pick in 2023 that you're alluding to, and a 4th rounder in 2024 Striatic. So that's expensive.
It's that first round pick, and Reed Schaefer also a first round selection, although he was like 32, so he was late first round selection. Right. But he was just drafted last season, So it was kind of sort of like giving up two firsts in a way, although 32nd, we can talk about like how much of a first round pick that is. But uh, yeah, kind of sort of, if you squint at it, two first round picks for a defender that doesn't have a lot of points right now in this season, and who's better, whose best days, I think in his entrance interview with the Oilers, he said, my best days are behind me. But I mean, he provides what they need, which is a lot of additional stability on defense, and just they got a lot scarier. I think they got a lot scarier to face in a playoff by bringing him in. And they also brought in Bukestad, who's also big. Like, they've really changed since the beginning of the season. They've like called up Vincent Desharnais. Like, they've gotten a lot bigger. They've their Bouchard's getting more minutes. He's a bigger guy because he's going to be paired with Ekholm. Ekholm's a bigger guy. And they've got like Ceci and Nurse on their first pairing. And they've, Vander Kane's going to be coming back in. They lost Jesse Puljujarvi, but like the team is starting to feel a little bit more balanced, and it's kind of surprised me, actually. I didn't think that adding one player would change the complexion of the team's defense as much as it has in just two games, but it is very noticeable difference.
Yeah, like instantly, I kind of noticed it too. I was watching, a little bit more condensed game, not the full game, but like you're saying, I definitely had a different feel to it right out of the gate. You also mentioned Puljujarvi. That's always a tough one for me to say. So you went to the Hurricanes. Puljujarvi. That's easier if we just kind of roll it all together. But I wanted to get to the user comment here. Hunter Williams, thanks for being on the stream, says, I wish the Kraken jumped in on that Chychrun trade. He would have been great. He would have been a great fit for the present and the future. And, kind of like we talked about, I think towards the beginning here, maybe it just wasn't, at Ron Francis's buy limit. And the Senators made a bigger push for it, and that's where he ended up going. It was a
conditional first and a second, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't, it wasn't in the budget, right?
I also think like that for the Kraken, so it seems like it would be pretty easy to match that. But we need to understand that there is the potential of that Ottawa first being a top 10 pick. So they are getting Chychrun, but they also have, I think, the second hardest strength of schedule down the stretch. So it's very possible for them to get knocked down into, and it is a lottery protected pick, but it's that pick is going to be a lot better than Seattle's first. So we can't just substitute, or most teams can't just substitute their first for that Ottawa first. And then the other aspect of it is, apparently, I don't know if you've heard this, but Arizona seems to be having like money problems.
What?
Seem to be having financial difficulties. So they were saying
Jeremy Roenick?
They were saying that they basically couldn't take any salary back. Which is funny because then they went and made a trade with the Oilers where they traded Bukestad and they did retain salary, but he's making so little. It's like $500,000 AAV. It's nothing. But on Chychrun, it would have been taking back the player that would be needed to replace his salary would have been difficult for them. So in order to get the retention done right. So, I think like RJ on Emerald City Hockey made a good point, right? That like you would hope that Francis would have been able to be creative enough to assemble that value, but it's definitely not a situation where you can just take the deal that Ottawa gave Arizona and just say, oh, like Seattle could have easily done that. Like there would have had to have been some more moving parts there. It would have been a little bit difficult to execute. I do kind of feel like I wanted it to happen when I saw that trade go down, just how little it was. It's like, oh my gosh, Ron, how could you not have done this? But after sitting down and thinking about it for a little bit, I can sort of see how it would have been. It would have required a lot more moving parts for Seattle to give that same value to Arizona.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Oilers and Jets tied right now, it looks like, in the first period. So keeping an eye on that. The Jets, another team, they added kind of quietly. Niederreiter came over. So Ty, that we're kind of the Jets. The Wild also made a couple of moves. Marcus Johansson, and Klingberg comes over from the Ducks. I don't know. I'm not a huge Klingberg. I'm sure he's a great guy, but as far as playing defense, it hasn't looked great in the last couple of years. I was happy that the Kraken didn't get involved in that. Maybe Chychrun, that would have been a little bit more interesting, but like Striatic mentioned, just kind of tough on Ron Francis and what his budget was. But and then also, you guys can both chime in on this one. Ty, you can kick it off, but the Jonathan Quick move out to Columbus, right? And then right back to Vegas. And we're all hoping for a Vegas-Los Angeles first-round matchup. I would love to see that go down. But yeah, Ty, talk through the Jets Wild and the Jonathan Quick situation for us, if you could.
So Quick, Chychrun is from Ottawa, so he's going home. His family lives there. He's got a home there and everything. So probably would have been pretty hard to compete with that also. And then also Tkachuk is kind of one of those captains. It's a big kind of old school hockey player with mad skill that players want to play with. So pretty good sell. I've heard all kinds of good stuff about, that scenario for him. So I'm indifferent. Cool if he was the Kraken, cool if he's not. Like, have at it, bud. The Wild and stuff like that, I didn't.
So I'll jump in just a little bit. The Wild, okay. I drink the Wild Kool-Aid every spring. Like last year, I was like, oh man, they got Marc-Andre Fleury. Yeah, I was feeling good, and then you hear about all the craziness going on with the goalies, the background. Like that wasn't a great situation, and they had the Blues kind of on the ropes. They started that series off, if I remember right. Series. And then the Blues came back and just smashed them, and it's just like, why do I fall for this every year with the Minnesota Wild? I don't know what. Just right off the top of your head, Minnesota Wild, what comes to mind when you hear their name?
I mean, same thing you just said, Marc-Andre Fleury. I mean, obviously being kind of a long-term sports fan, Marc-Andre Fleury is a pretty special character in the NHL. I respect the hell out of him, and I love what he's done. I think he's a fantastic goalie. Anybody would be excited to have him. But I mean,
maybe some pressure mounting there a little bit to advance further in the playoffs.
They've been close, but they're missing pieces and stuff like that. And I think they have some exciting players also that could really make it, a little bit better. Let's see. Like, I think I want to look at their cap friendly real quick. Maybe
I'm in the same boat as you, Squatch. Like I really bought their potential last season, and I thought that they had a great deadline, and then they didn't have a great playoff. So I mean, it's
wasn't that series 3-1? What, weren't they up 3-1 in that series? Or anyway, sorry.
It was a brutal series, yeah.
It feels like a million years ago.
And he's just asking these questions right on the spot too. It's not like, let's go study playoffs from last year because I'm asking about it.
Right.
Yeah, but I think with them, there's always a little bit of apprehension about whether they've and I don't like Kling. But I mean, as a gamble, maybe Klingberg. I mean, there's certainly no guarantee he's going to be any good. What a story though! Last offseason, Klingberg, like
they got Dumba also.
Like he was the number one UFA potential, and then why Anaheim? I just don't understand. There's certain players that where you're like, particularly if you're looking at the UFA world, you just think about their agents and think like, oh man, the level of incompetence. But he put himself in. He sort of like, I think Taylor Hall did a similar thing once, where like he signed like a 1 year, $8 million with Buffalo, right? And that ended up paying off well. He was, rented off to Boston, and then it paid off well for him. But with the defender, it's so much like your numbers are so contingent on deployment, especially power play deployment, and being on a team that has players that can like finish for you. And I'm just not sure what he was thinking when he signed with Anaheim. Like, it was on a prove it deal, but defenders, it's a different situation. Like, you need to be in a good situation in order to be able to prove it.
Yeah, so, and that's kind of a tough situation there anyways, because they're trying to build something and they're all over the place defensively. They've got some young firepower, but and
if you want to look good, if you want to get a lot of points, why would you go on a team that's like ripping it, like that's essentially almost trying to tank. Like it wasn't clear that was the case during the summer, but the eagerness with which they sort of do that since then has made it clear that they don't really believe in their players quite yet. So I don't know. Just on a human level, it's like, oh man, John Klingberg, like. But I don't know. Maybe he'll have a good playoff run and he'll rebuild his value and he'll be valuable in free agency again. Like that for him, this is great.
Definitely. Yeah. Hunter Williams also just updated us. Winnipeg just scored, so they got a 2-1 lead over the Oilers now. Looks like it's still first period.
I was talking about how Ekholm was like, totally changing their defense and they gave up 2 for period.
Right. All it took was us jinxing them. So I'm okay with that, though. I want the Oilers to lose tonight. So, okay. So let's get your thoughts real quick, Striatic, on the Jonathan Quick potential revenge series here. And then we'll go forth, maybe get it a little bit further into the weeds with these trades individually.
The best storyline in hockey.
Yeah.
The answer to my prayers. Like this is so fantastic. Like I hate to like give love to the Las Vegas Golden Knights because I hate them so much, but I kind of love this. This is just too good. And the thing is, for them, like for the Golden Knights, this goes beyond stats because Quick has been pretty poor this season, just way below replacement level. This is a pure gut move. This is pure like, okay, well, Jonathan Quick was bad this season, but like, what if he was angry? What if he was pissed off? How good is a pissed off Jonathan Quick? So I'm curious to see whether that works because he has bounced back. Like last season, he had a great season, right? Like he'd been struggling for a while and he was able to turn it around, temporarily. And he was pretty, and he was decent enough in that series against the Oilers that they took to 7 games, right? So he has kind of demonstrated that like he's bounced back before. And, as goalies get older, sometimes they do kind of bounce back, like Mike Smith last season, Ty. Sometimes they do kind of bounce back a little bit.
And then they put the puck in their own net sometimes too.
Or they score from the red line.
Well, anyway,
Striatic and I have some history where we're poking each other last playoffs. It was super fun.
But I will say, but what I will say is that you can't bank on him bouncing back every time forever, right? But maybe he's got one more bounce back left in him, and I'm really curious to see whether that's the case. So.
It's the perfect like Vegas gambler move. I like it.
I'm really excited. I'm really hoping, I've said it 3 times now, but can we please, hockey gods, get an LA Vegas Golden Knights matchup early on? That would be great. Ty, let's talk a little bit more Pacific Division here, a team that we kind of all figured was going to take a step backward this year. I talked with Shalana Goldman at length in the offseason. The Sharks, definitely going into rebuilding mode. A lot of questions about what they were able to get back in return. But let's talk Timo Meier. I know you had some thoughts on Timo potentially being rumored to Seattle at times. He's going to be expensive, obviously going into restricted free agency, if I remember right. But he's headed to the Devils, and a huge amount of pieces exchange places there between those two teams. But maybe a little bit about the Sharks, Timo Meier, and the direction the Sharks are headed now. But also, what are your thoughts on the Devils back east with Timo coming in?
Timo is such a hard one because he's either killing it or he's not really that streaky, but he is kind of streaky. I don't know. He's a weird player to watch for a long time. The dude can score in the NHL level, and that's obviously an important thing. Will he complement Hughes and those guys over in New Jersey? That's kind of what's going to be interesting to watch because he didn't necessarily have like any slouches next to him in San Jose either. So pretty crazy trade. The thing that scared me the most was that $10 million qualifying offer that was in his contract for next year. I didn't want to touch that at all, but man, kind of selling, I don't want to say selling the whole farm, but selling a good portion of the farm to get Timo to come over, line him up with him, young gun Jack Hughes, and then see what they can do. So It could be exciting to watch. Could be not a whole big change at all. We'll see. But San Jose, I think they've acknowledged, the fans know, everybody knows, rebuild mode, get some pieces in place, and yeah, I'm excited to kind of see what they do.
It seemed like the analysts in general on the big networks weren't too thrilled with the return that the Sharks got, but I don't know. With these types of trades, there's so many pieces, so many conditional picks. You just have to wait and see what it turns into. I know Mike Greer knows what he's doing as far as having that hockey IQ. He is a new GM, but I don't think guys
He's not new to hockey.
Yeah, people don't get into these positions by accident. So I think you got to give Greer time. They, like you said, San Jose has now kind of embraced the fact that they, are in fact rebuilding. Jumbo Joe's not going to be on the ice anymore. Patrick Marleau.
He was, though.
Yeah, they that's true. They just had the Patrick Marleau night, which was awesome, by the way. But yeah, it's just a whole different vibe there. It's kind of heartbreaking too, because I grew up watching that team, and those guys were legends and still are legends for many years. But it's definitely a new leaf flipping over in San Jose. But Striatic, maybe your thoughts as well on the Timo trade.
I'm excited by it just because I want to see what Timo Meier can do in the playoffs. Like he's like a point per game player basically, and a very skilled hockey player who can finish and do all kinds of good stuff. But like one of my favorite moments from last season was when he almost single-handedly, he put his team on his back and knocked the Las Vegas Golden Knights out of the playoffs. Yeah. And just the joy that he exhibited, an awful season for that team. And just the thrill he had in, like, he knew what that game was about. Like, I think he, was asked about it in interviews and stuff. Like, that's the personality that it's like you want to get into the playoffs. That's not the stat sheet, although that's really important, extremely important, but also the personality you want to see in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like it's the quotes you want to get. It's the fire he's going to, put into his team. I'm not sure how you measure that. I don't like getting players that don't have the underlying numbers and then being like, oh, the intangibles, they're going to fix their team, or getting a guy just for intangibles. But here's a guy that combines both, and you really, it becomes very interesting to see what he'll do in the playoffs. I also think it's kind of cool to have him be on the same team with Hischier to kind of get that Swiss connection going.
Yeah. Good point.
It seems like, anyway, the Devils are an interesting team. I'm not sure if they're a Stanley Cup winning team, but the thing with Meier is, they have him for at least one more year, and they've got like Simon Nemec coming up. He was excellent in World Juniors. Like, for them, it's almost like this is a trade where if they're able to negotiate that next year, like he's there with his fellow Swiss in Hischier, like it seems the team is on an upward trajectory. They have a lot of good prospects that are coming into their system. I think that signing him long term won't be a problem. And because they have him under contract, they're the only team that's going to be able to give him the 8 years. So that gives them a negotiating advantage compared to the option of him going to UFA. I think given their situation and their prospect situation, I think like it's almost like a longer term, like the next 2 or 3 years thing, where I think that this could benefit them. And who knows, like we haven't seen, full on, fully leveled up and matured playoff Timo Meier. Has he ever made the playoffs as a Shark?
Yeah, he was a part of the runs there in San Jose before, kind of things went downhill. But him and Logan Couture, they stepped up big time for the Sharks in some of those series. Another guy that, he's on Couture, that is on record, loves the Sharks, wants to be there through this. Erik Karlsson maybe didn't echo that as much, but Timo, like you're saying, I think he can be really effective player in the playoffs. And who knows what the Devils, they are young, but these are the pieces that you've got to add if you're going to start to compete in the East, especially. Man, it's tough. It's going to be a rough ride out there. I can't wait for the playoffs. We're almost there, right? March 4th. Here we got just over a month and some days until we get to the playoffs. Guys, I was going to try to keep it right around, an hour-ish today. This has been a lot of fun. We've checked in on the scores a little bit. Looks like the Jets still have a lead there. Sharks are actually losing to the Caps, and the Penguins are trailing the Panthers there. Blue Jackets trailing the Senators. But maybe we can just kind of roll through the list here, and I'll just, read some of them off that we've missed, or just highlight some of them. If you guys have some thoughts as we go, just chime in, and then maybe kind of a wrap up, and we'll call it a night from there. But things really kind of kicked off. If you go, I guess we could go back to the Kraken trade. They picked up Megna from the Sharks for a 4th-round pick. So just a depth move there.
Yep.
But really, it felt like things. I think the first bigger trade was that Orlov trade, like you talked about, Striatic, on. That was the 23rd. So the Bruins got Orlov and Hathaway, and the Caps received Smith, Svetlakov, and a variety of picks there. And the Wild were also a part of that. They got a 5th-round pick. I'm not sure. Did they flip that in the other trade? I can't remember. Doesn't say here, but didn't get that in my notes. So anyways, Niederreiter to the Jets from the Predators. Here's one we didn't talk about. Guryanov goes to the Canadiens, and the Stars get Evgeny Dodonov. So interesting move there. Knights picked up Barbashev from the Blues, sent Dean the other way. And then right after that, that was the big Timo Meier trade that we've talked about. Here's one that's kind of interesting to me because I don't think he's been super effective. And I'm not really sure if you guys want to chime in on this, but I'm not really sure where my mind is with the Colorado Avalanche, right? Stanley Cup, defending the Stanley Cup championship they won last spring. They bring over Jack Johnson from the Blackhawks. What's up with the Avalanche? I haven't kept real good track of them, surprisingly, and that's who the Kraken play tomorrow. But I feel like this is one of the most under-the-radar seasons that I've seen a Stanley Cup champ have in recent memory. Maybe it's just because I'm getting old and I'm having trouble keeping track, but
they've been super banged up all year too. Like Landers is still on LTIR.
Right.
So the captain of the team is on LTIR. So
yeah, and they did, and losing Kadri too.
Yes.
I don't think they've really replaced that, but banged up plus minus Kadri equals wild card, but they're still, despite all that, they're still
Nate McKinnon.
They're still a playoff team, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, they still have Nishushkin and all those guys, Mikko Rantanen, obviously Lehkonen, Comfort, Ehlers. Like this lineup is solid. And then you back it up with Cale Makar. I mean, you heard him last year. Like, how do you win a Stanley Cup? You say you go find a Cale Makar. He's still there, and he's there for a long time.
Definitely a team that you feel like they can turn on the gas a little bit. It's like once you have that mythic Stanley Cup knowledge, it's like
they're kind of the anti-Bruins this season. Like they've been getting a lot of bad luck as opposed to, I guess, good bounces and stuff that you could argue that the Bruins have been getting, and they've been banged up. I don't think the Bruins have seen a lot of injury. I know Taylor Hall's injured now, but I don't think they've really been hurt in that same way. But yeah, no, they're definitely sneaky good, and especially if they get Landeskog back in the playoffs, even if he's 80%, that's still going to be pretty good for them. I do want to say that so just the deadline for the Kraken, and one of the things to measure a deadline for your team is like, did any other teams make trades that you would have liked your team to make? And I think the one comment that we got about Chychrun was sort of like, and then you could sort of sit back and say, oh, it would have been hard for us to make that. The one trade that kind of I would have been interested in seeing is that Niederreiter trade. That he could have been an interesting addition to the Kraken playoff run, and he's got a year of term. So if you're in the camp that it's not really this year, but like next year while Maddie's still on his ELC, and we can maximize his ELC, and maybe Wright's coming into the picture, then the idea of bringing in a guy like Niederreiter, I forget what Winnipeg paid for him, but it was
let's see here, Niederreiter, Predators, a 2024 second round.
Okay, so we do have 3 second rounds, and I think that's that's one where you can kind of go back and forth on whether that's worth it, because he could help on next year playoff run as well.
This is supposed to be like a legendarily deep draft as well. So
yes, that's what Francis said. So I think you can go two ways on that. You can, well, not two ways on that, but you can say, oh, we've got 3 seconds. We've got a lot of really good prospects from last draft. We can afford to spend a second. But yeah, that was one trade where I think I thought maybe the Kraken, that would have made sense for the Kraken, given that 2-year term, maximizing Maddie's ELC. And I think highly of the player, and we have a lot of second rounders. That could have maybe worked. But I mean, you can also see it from Francis's perspective. If he thinks the draft's that deep, then he's going to hold on to all those seconds. So
yeah, like why not? If that's where you're going to strike gold, hang on to those picks and be patient and wait till the draft. Yeah, this is great. Toronto, we definitely talked about their playoff fortunes, but maybe not so much about the acquisitions they made. Real quick here, brought in Jake McCabe. Chicago retained 50% of salary on that deal. Sam Lafferty also came over in that one. And they got a 5th-round pick, 2024, a conditional 2025 5th-round pick. Blackhawks got Joey Anderson, a couple of other picks there. But I don't know, maybe Ty and Striatic, if you want to just talk Maple Leafs again real quick here. I feel like they made a couple of moves. I think it was McCabe. I thought there was one other. Oh, yeah, Luke Shin from the Canucks came over. So just a couple of
Ryan O'Reilly.
I was going to say Ryan O'Reilly. Like
sorry.
The shining.
Yes. Yeah, that one's definitely on there. I just didn't scroll down far enough. But yeah, so O'Reilly.
But that's the point, right? They've made so many moves.
Oh, they sold the farm.
Yeah, you wonder what that does. Like that the deadline for them might be a little hard to judge. I know that Ryan O'Reilly came in and made an immediate impact, and they were super happy, and they made a bunch of other trades, and they threw up an absolute dud against the Oilers. It might take a while because of how many moves they've made for this team to kind of like congeal.
Yeah.
But from their perspective, if they think, we're locked into a 1st-round playoff match with Tampa, we're basically a lock for the playoffs. We can make these we can rebuild the team, right?
Yeah.
Maybe make it instantly better than it was before. I do think they're throwing everything at this playoff. It's
well, so in Ty and I have talked about this. Like this is the year. If things don't happen, things are changing in Toronto.
Yeah,
definitely.
This is a GM that doesn't have any long-term vision because it's now or never.
And also, I mean, they need to have some success if they want Matthews to stay here, but to stay there. But it also seems so strange to me because it's not like Matthew surely knows all the draft capital that they've been sending out, and that this is very much short-term play, and they I'm not sure. I think that may have been one of the reasons why, like the Oilers, for example, didn't spend their 1st-round picks in previous seasons. Part of that's about making sure that you have that prospect pipeline that makes a player like McDavid or Draisaitl confident in signing another long-term contract with the team.
Yeah.
With Matthews, it almost feels like they don't think that he's going to be signing a long-term contract with them, that he's going to want to go to UFA, and that they have to act now. And so that's why they're just shedding these 1st-round picks over multiple years. But if they do have an inkling that he's not going to stay, then you should probably just go for it.
Got to hedge one way or the other, right?
Yeah, Tavares isn't getting any younger, right? So, and then I think Mitch Marner. I mean, he's probably a Leaf for life, right? But
25, 26.
I mean, he's had a roller coaster relationship with that organization. So
yeah, definitely. I just want to say hi real quick. Gregory just logged in saying hi, guys. What's up, Gregory? Thanks for being on the stream. Maybe if you want to share your thoughts in the chat real quick on the trade deadline for the Kraken or for other teams, I'll read those out here on the broadcast before we log out, kind of towards the end of the stream here, Gregory. But thanks again for dropping by. And also thanks, Striatic and Ty, for all of your inputs today. But yeah, I'm kind of with you on this one. I feel like the writing's on the wall a little bit. in Toronto, Austin Matthews, and man, they looked so good when they came through Seattle. I made you just realize like Toronto hockey versus Kraken hockey right now. And, Seattle didn't have their A game that day, but even if they did, it just felt like a whole different league, maybe, I guess you would say. But yeah, I feel like Toronto's got to get it done this year, Ty. I don't know, maybe if you want to tail end on that.
Yeah, I just look at this Toronto roster, man. They are stacked. I mean, you got Austin Matthews, John Tavares, Mitch Marner, Willie Nylander. That guy, like, talk about taking a change. Like, he stepped it up big time this year. He's actually becoming that. They run that 3-2 offensive zone setup, and he kind of sits high slot, and he's just been making them pay. Like, I like what they have going on. The fan base, obviously, some people maybe don't like them so much. I love it. I think the more emotional and more like invested you can get in a team, man, the more power to you. Fly off the handle if you're going to fly off the handle. Steve dangle it, lose your voice. Like, that kind of stuff is really entertaining, and that's what makes like hockey so powerful as a fan and stuff like that. So yeah, these guys are stacked. Sell the farm, go for the gold. Gotta, break that little first round bump, and then I think that whole town's going to go insane. So. But yeah, I could continue. Like, you got Callie Yarncrook on there, which we kind of like that guy.
Yeah,
he's all right now. Ryan O'Reilly, like, it's a stacked team, and I like it, man. Let's go. Let's see. Like, this is what Gio went over there to do, is to play at home and potentially go to the playoffs. And I mean, if you look down the UFA list, you got it a pretty good. Like, this season obviously is good, but then next season you have Kerfoot going, Ryan O'Reilly going, Kampf going. A whole bunch of these guys going. Austin Matthews is still around next year. He's 24-25. Nylander is 24-25, where you got Tavares and Marner is 25-26. So, I mean, there's going to be some guys around. And, man, for that fan base, they would be obnoxious and just disgusting to deal with. And if they do it, man, I'm all about it. Let's go.
I'm excited to see.
They're due.
I'm kind of hoping for in the East to see another Toronto-Boston matchup as well. Gregory says
juggernaut teams.
Yeah, right. So it's like my wish list for the playoffs is Vegas and LA in the West at some point, and Toronto and Boston in the East at some point. We'll see if that happens. But Gregory says, I'm happy the Kraken stayed pat. Boston and Toronto had the best trades, and also saying Caps getting Sandin was a great move too. A little bit more under the radar in that, that slew of guys there that were transacted. I think that was that the Orlov? Oh, hold on a minute. I got to scroll back up now. I scrolled all the way down to the Ryan O'Reilly trade because I somehow didn't get that at the top of the list. It's because it happened a while ago, right?
One of the main big ones.
I know. I'm just like, what am I doing here? I got to sort by priority, not by time. But yeah. Thanks for chiming in, Gregory. Cap's going to be an interesting team to watch too. See if they can sneak in there in the wild card. It's going to be tough in the East, but guys, maybe any final thoughts here? Striatic, start with you. Just as we go here into March, it's March 4th. Maybe your thoughts as we go into the stretch run, Kraken or just league wide.
So let's talk Kraken, because we've talked a lot about the rest of the league, but my wife closed the door.
It's okay.
So the Kraken have, so I don't know. I think the way that the rest of the Western Conference is shaking out, they're pretty safe, so long as they don't completely fall apart. And it doesn't look like there's any signs that they will. They've, been a little up and down throughout the season, but never too down. Like, they've never lost more than 3 games. So they're in good shape to make the playoffs. And then it's just a question of whether they can win a round or not. And so if we get our dream, right, of the Kings and the Golden Knights facing off against each other in the first round, a grudge match versus Jonathan Quick, then there's every possibility that we're in an Oilers Kraken first round situation. And wouldn't that be something if the Oilers were able to if the Kraken were able to knock off the Oilers in the first round? Like, that would be we're here kind of statement for the Kraken to the rest of the league. And so that's sort of the situation that I would like to see develop with the Kraken. And I think they have it in them to win a series. I think once they start tangling with some of the other teams, I don't think they match up very well against Vegas. They match up okay versus the Kings, but the Kings are getting some better goaltending now. I love those Central Division teams we do not match up well against. So in terms of a long run, but first round, against some of these, against maybe the Kings or the Oilers, I think there is a potential for a first round upset, which would be kind of neat for this team.
Be exciting, kind of build, into the future a little bit, get the fans excited about it. They haven't been amazing at home, but that could be another stepping stone and giving Seattle that taste of, an NHL playoff series with, high intensity and usually all the theater that comes with it. And that'd be cool, Striatic, because I know you are a prior fan or continuing fan of the Oilers, but leaning more towards the Kraken these days. So that would be very cool to see. I'm kind of hoping. Obviously, we are all hoping that they're gonna sneak into the playoff. Well, maybe not sneak in is the right word. I think they, like I've said, I think they're in the driver's seat. They just got to play 500 hockey, and not go into any of these like 4-game, even 3-game losing streaks at this point is tough. So let's just keep them.
Yeah, it was interesting to see Nashville sold, so that they're kind of they could still maybe sneak in and maybe grab one of those wild cards, but they sold so hard that it's hard to look at them as a threat. And so that leaves Calgary, and you have to think that they've been struggling recently too. Like, we have a nice right. gap on them. So if there's just one team, we just need to stay ahead of Calgary. That's the scoreboard watch for me, is just Calgary at this point, pretty much.
Yeah. Anything else kind of gravy, really. I mean, it's nice to watch the Edmonton Oilers maybe stumble a little bit here and there, but the Kings, Vegas, those teams might be tough down the stretch to keep up pace-wise with. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Ty, you want to chime in here, wrap things up for us, get the last word, and then I think I'm going to play some Blades of Steel here.
I don't think I'll get the last word based off what I was contemplating saying is. So playoffs is very coach heavy. You need a coach that's going to be quick to make changes, quick to adapt. This is kind of one of the things we were worried about Bednar with last year with Colorado, but he proved a lot of us wrong that he could do it. He made changes and he won series handily. Hackstall is very, very unproven to me. I'm still not bought into he's this God's given thing that some people think he is. I really want to see what he does in the playoffs. I have enjoyed that he's shown more emotion this year. He's actually has a personality, but I mean, he's got really nothing to fall back on as far as like, hey, look what I did with the Flyers or something like that. Like,
or even in his college days, he was very long tenured, but I don't think he ever won a national championship. And there's a lot that can go into that from roster. But you would think with the amount of success he had in college that he would be able to take at least one of those teams to a national championship. Did not happen. So, and we all know for Hack, like, he is very reluctant to make those quick changes.
Yep.
Be adaptable. Yep. I agree with you there, Ty.
Unless it's the lines, then he'll just.
And you gotta be fast to adapt in the playoff. We've seen it a lot over just the recent past. Like, you've got to be flexible. I think this is one of the downfalls of Todd McClellan. Unfortunately, he's gotten maybe better at it, but in some of his years, San Jose, even in Edmonton, he just didn't adapt and change and adjust fast enough. It felt like just a little more familiar for me with the West Coast. But yeah, Hackstall, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll have to see. And just kind of coming into the season, I said that Hackstall is going to have to keep up with the young guys on this team. He's going to have to adapt and develop as a coach, just like Matty Beniers is going to have to adapt and adjust as a player, so on and so forth. So we'll see if he can do it. I don't know. I'm not sold either.
I'm not saying that I'm upset. I'm anti-Hack. Let's fire him right now. Like, no. I'm just saying, like, maybe my perspective is we make the playoffs. Man, that exceeds my expectations from when we started out this season. Like, that's going to be exciting. Do I look at this team after watching hockey for 20 some years and say, man, they have what it takes to, go second, third round? No, I'm sorry. They don't. They don't have the pieces. They don't have you either have to have some insane goaltending. Like you think about like Otter last year, like that dude carried that Dallas team deep.
Yeah, that was impressive. This year?
I don't know. Like you got to have something going right for you. You got to have that Oilers power play that scores every single time. They also have Jay Woodcroft. Like that dude, not only can he do like amazing video review, but now he's taken that skill and he's applied it to his head coach gig. And he makes some great changes mid-games, mid-series, things like that kind of trip teams up for a little while. I don't see those tools in our toolbox right now, player-wise, or I think we're in a great spot. This season's been super fun. We'll get a little taste of playoffs. I can't wait for these fans to see how intense NHL playoffs are, especially when you are emotionally invested in a team. Oh my gosh, it's going to be so much fun. But do I expect waves? Absolutely not. Like I'm pretty happy with what we've done. I'm happy with where we're going. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So,
and I think Hackstall's got, he's obviously bought himself another year here with the performance that they've put on the table. Gregory asking, who would you think would be a better coach for this team? Maybe not now, but maybe in the future. And if you guys want to chime in on that real quick, and then that'll be last question, last comment for today's stream. And by the way, going to put this out on the podcast channel as well. So follow and rate and subscribe, all that great stuff over there as well. But maybe who would be a better coach?
Who would be a better coach for this team? I mean, like it depends on who's available, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it also depends on what you're looking for. Right.
And Barry Trotz is off the table now, right?
I was going to say Trotz, but man, does he coach some seriously boring hockey to watch. So like Trotz would probably, discipline this team up and clean us up, but he has a boring scheme.
Isn't he going to get back involved with Nashville? Did I see that, or was that?
I haven't seen anything about Trotzy.
I guess we'll see.
I think, wasn't he, Poyle's leaving as GM, right?
Yeah, and I thought that they were going to bring Trotz back into the fold organization.
Yeah, I don't think he's really interested in coaching anymore, really. I mean, he had some opportunity, I think, in Winnipeg. They thought about bringing him in. I don't think, he is set to become the second general manager for the Preds in July 2023. But before that, he'll be an advisor to Poyle, who's retiring, I guess. So I don't think he's available. I think it's like
every spring you get that carousel though, right? So there's going to be new names on the table as you go into the off season, but then you're going to have to wait again until next year, right?
Well, the crazy thing is it's not always people that you would think of. Like all of a sudden Martin St. Louis comes in and he's turned Montreal around completely, and with what they have anyways.
I'll throw an option out because we're already firing Hack. Can we stop firing Hack?
No, I'm okay.
It's so much fun to fire Hack.
I don't want to fire Hack. I don't want to fire Hack. That means we're doing bad.
Honestly, advocating firing Hack, but I'm going to fire Hack for fun.
I'm just for the banter of it.
Just for the fun,
Hashtag fire Hack for fun.
Sorry. And I've actually always been a really big fan of Dan Bylsma. And I think what he's been doing with the Firebirds this year has been fantastic. I think he kind of got a raw deal in some ways in his NHL tenure, but he still is a Stanley Cup winner. And I would be really interested to see what he would do with this team different than Dave Hackstall would. And I think he has some familiarity with some of the it's kind of like when Woodcroft came in for the Oilers, then suddenly all of his former proteges from Bakersfield he had more confidence in them and they were able to perform there. Sometimes when you bring in the AHL coach, it can provide an opening for some of these younger players. So I would say Dan Bylsma, but I'm not here to fire Hack right now.
I'm going after PK and PP
special
coach.
Teams.
Special teams coach. You're pretty hot.
Although the PK has been a lot better. I think they had that streak of like 16 PKs, but I have been noticing that's more been them understanding their personnel a little bit better and playing a little bit conservative, as opposed to having Alexiak putting himself out of position by Alexiak in particular, I think, has really improved on the PK just by being himself and just staying more controlled and not over chasing the puck. And I guess that's not like the ideal way to run a power play. You want a more energetic PK. You want a more energetic PK that can occupy more space to make up for the lack of numbers. Alexia can't really do that, but he is a big guy. I have been noticing that he's been making some improvements to his PK play, and I think in knowing himself and what he's capable of and not going outside that envelope has helped the PK a little bit. So I will give them some credit for turning a awful PK into an average PK. But we want better than average, right? We've got Brandon,
especially with the playoffs coming. You've got to be better than
against that. When you're on the PK and you get the same goal against scored on you over and over and over and over and over, that's what bothers me more than anything. Like, how many times have we seen someone just sitting at the front of the net, dunk, like, holy cow. And then all Twitter, the entire game, all you see is guys in front of the net, guys in front of the net, guys in front of the net. Like,
well, you know, the old adage is that your goaltender is your best penalty killer, but I don't completely buy that cliche. But
interesting. Like, so Grubauer has had really good numbers.
He has
all year round, but except for on the PK.
Yeah,
like that's really where he's been struggling the most. And so you wonder if that's a little bit of systems play, or if that's something with just how he's approaching being a goaltender in the PK. But they've been doing more average lately, so I'm not as
the power play is the one that drives me nuts. Like, it's
the bathroom break
still. Like, I'm sorry. Like, the power, like, I'm just like, hey, we should go. Like,
they're gonna have to get a little more creative, I think, on the power play. They've tried a few different looks throughout the season, but I do feel like they lean on that one timer off the wall a lot. I'd like to see
entering the zone. Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
just establishing your presence.
And we do need to dispel the notion that there are fewer power plays in the postseason. That is not true anymore.
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that go uncalled in the postseason.
Yeah,
that would normally be, but on the whole, you end up with just as much special teams play in the playoffs as you do during. And I think last postseason there was actually more penalties, more power plays on average than in the regular season last year. So, like Ty was saying earlier, it's not like the refs put the whistle away. They don't whistle as many things. Sorry, they don't whistle. They have a higher bar, but they still end up whistling just as much. Whistle still gets as much action as it does normally, even though there's more physical things happening. So
that's an interesting point, and maybe just kind of a misconception that has held. I didn't even realize that numbers wise, but kind of the old school mentality is like,
there's a lot of stuff that like happens and infractions that you see in the playoffs that just don't get whistled. So you think, oh, maybe there's fewer penalties called, but no, like the physical play elevates, and you do need to have players that are capable of enduring that punishment and stuff. And it is a different style of play, certainly, to the regular season, but you still need a good PK and you still need a good power play, because those are your best opportunities to score sometimes in the playoffs.
Gregory chimed in here real quick too, says, once we get our special teams corrected, watch out, league. So hopefully that's the case, and hopefully it happens as we go down the stretch here. Guys, it has been a lot of fun today. It looks like the Oilers and Jets are tied now, 3-3 in the second. Keep focusing on that one. I probably don't need to as much, and some of the other games have kicked off here, Canucks and Leafs, Predators and Blackhawks. But thank you, everybody, for listening, watching today. Thank you guys for being a part of this stream and wrapping up the trade deadline transactions and all the action that happened on the wire yesterday. It was exciting. I felt like it was great because there was a good lead up to it as well, and maybe not as many transactions on the deadline day, but still pretty eventful overall. Guys, thanks again. If you want to stick around for a few minutes after the stream and chit chat, that'd be great. But I'm going to wrap things up for today. And thanks for all the listeners, watchers over on YouTube, listeners on your podcast. Do appreciate all the support here on the channel. Great things coming for you guys here in the near future. Like I said, I'm working on that retro video game series, and as you can see down here, I've got the it's a little bit of a system test here with the Nintendo.
Down
so,
there.
Yeah, down here. I'm kind of trying to figure out.
It's really hard to
point.
figure out which direction to point.
Backwards all the time. But yeah, Ty and Striatic, hopefully you guys be a part of that as we go, and listeners, viewers out there as well. I'm excited about it, and I've put a lot of hard work in it so far, and I can't wait to launch it here in the near future. But thanks again, guys. Have a great night. We're going to end the stream for now, and I'll talk to you after the break. All right?
We'll see you.